Are you someone who has a lot of house parties and is always looking for something to play? Are you someone who has tried out the apples to apples and the telestrations and the what do you memes and the Cards Against Humanity, and you're looking for something else that might be a little bit more fun even when you've gotten a couple of drinks in you? Well, if any of those things apply to you, then I have the perfect game for you, because today on Joker Reviews, we're going to be reviewing Audacity. Okay, so Audacity is a pretty simple game to explain. It's broken down into 4 decks. You have 3 different levels of Audacity decks, which have your challenges, all based on kind of comfort level. And you have your play deck, which is going to be the cards that determine who plays the Audacity card that's on the table, or if you played at all, there's some that allow you to kind of get out of it or pass it off to somebody else. The different levels of decks are based on the comfort level of the party or the people that are playing, and that's kind of a cool feature where you can kind of choose your comfort level. So like the basic one, not safe for prudes, is going to be fairly mild. So the player to your left will judge while the player to their left has a dance off with you. The loser must bow down to the winner and worship their magic feet. So yeah, it might be a little embarrassing and it's funny, but it's nothing that's kind of crazy and is going to make anybody uncomfortable for the most part. You have the middle one, which is the needs consent one, that might have some light touching and things like that. So something that you might have to ask permission, or people are kind of giving permission when you're playing with this deck. You might want to ask beforehand. So an example of this card would be like, get on all fours and impersonate an alpha lion in heat. After proving yourself the most virile in your pride, attempt to mate with another player. So obviously that requires some consent. You're not going to want to play that with just anybody. And then you have the R-rated deck, which is going to be you better be really close to the people you're playing with. So something like this: you and the player to your left are robots. You know no shame. Demonstrate how robots get it on while other players record the robo porn. So that's the Orgasmatron card. So you can kind of see how that might make people a little uncomfortable. You might want to ask and make sure you're playing with the right people. But once one of these cards, we'll just kind of use this one for an example. Move these off to the side. And once the card is drawn, the player who drew the card then draws one of the play cards. And that can either be a nay, a yay, a flip, or one of the 2 different types of save and ask cards. So you have a couple of different nays, yays. So say it's a yay card. Right here you have, this is an example of one where you have to play it. Your number's up, complete the Audacity. So now that person has to complete the Audacity. Here's another one where you have the power, pick someone else to execute the Audacity. So now you can just pick somebody, and that's, they have to do it because they're the one that you picked. And here's another one. Let each player flirt with you. The most epic fail must enact the Audacity. So that's another version of a yay where it's kind of like a challenge, and that person who fails has to do it. There's other ones where it's like the last person to do this, or the last person who did this specific act was the one who has to do it. You have nay cards. Nay cards are, it's not all about you. Give a less attractive ass the spotlight for once. Next. So now you do not have to do this Audacity. So somebody else will probably have to do it. This is a flip card. Impersonate a famous diva while you flip and read a new Audacity card. So this one makes you do something, but when you do it, you get to flip over the Audacity, and then it's another one that you might be a little bit more comfortable doing or something like that. Here's a save and ask card. Keep this card. You can play it to dodge an Audacity. So this one you just kind of hold on to it, and then you play it whenever you have one on there that you really don't want to do. And then there's another one here, which is like a rare card. There's only one in the deck, I believe. And you keep this card to rescue a damsel in distress from an Audacity. So this one you can play on somebody else to prevent them from having to do it. And this is kind of the principles of the game. And now we're going to meet you back up top, and I'm going to give my final thoughts on the game. Okay, so now that you know how the game works, let me get a little bit into my final thoughts. To be honest, when the guys at Social Lubricant Games reached out to me about reviewing their game, I hadn't heard of the game before, But I looked into it a little bit, saw the box art, the card art, and watched their videos where they were talking about it and kind of how to play and all that. And I got really excited and I really wanted to try out this game. Of course, the current world situation put that a little bit on hold, but since then I've actually been able to try it out with a bunch of different groups, and I've been able to kind of take my different friend groups and the different people that are in my life and mix them around and try them out in different types of mixed company. And these are kind of my experiences with them. The big thing that I will say going into my review of this game is know your company. There are 3 levels of decks, as I explained in the mechanics section, and those 3 levels are based on kind of the comfort level of the people playing and your comfort level of playing with the people that you're with. The first level you can play with most adult company. There's not going to be anything that you're going to run into in the first deck, the not safe for prudes deck, that is going to make you super uncomfortable. There's not really anything that you might have to ask permission for or anything like that. Some of it's embarrassing, some of it's stuff that you might not normally do, but it's all in good fun. The second deck, there's some touching, there's things like that where it is called the needs consent deck, so you definitely want to make sure that people know what they're in for going into it. It's still nothing crazy, but it's a little bit more out there, so you definitely want like a friend group that you're at least somewhat comfortable with. And the last deck, the R-rated deck, it's R-rated for a reason, so you definitely want to make sure that you have a close friend group. I did get to try out all 3 of these decks with various friend groups, and I know the people that I play games with. I play a lot of games. I know the people that I play games with very well, so I kind of know who I can play which decks with, and I never really ran into a situation where anybody was not aware of what they were in for and wasn't really kind of down for whatever the specific deck was going to ask of them. If you're going to look for a game that works very well when you're under a little bit of a social lubricant, which makes the gaming company that makes this game the perfectly named gaming company, you can really make a drinking game out of this very easily. It's something that I think pairs with that sort of party a lot better than something like a Cards Against Humanity or What Do You Meme, because something like that, yeah, you're going to find the cards more funny when you're obviously socially lubricated, but something like this you can easily turn into a drinking game if people don't want to do specific ones. They have to take a drink or something like that. In terms of components, because I always like to talk about components when it's games like this, especially when it's games made by a smaller company, I feel like a lot of smaller companies have to cut corners with components because, obviously they don't have the kind of revenue to spend on their game. But I will give Social Lubricant Gaming a lot of credit. They do have good card stock. They have good artwork on it. I like their little mascot, the donkey guy with the monocle and the hat. I do appreciate that they have rounded corners on their cards. I very much appreciate that because it's been something that I've talked about in a lot of other game reviews where I'm talking about games that have cards. A lot of them have pointed corners and those get dented and they get messed up. And then if you're doing a kind of game where the cards actually really matter when you know which ones are coming out, and then you have those dented card corners, it's kind of easy to know which cards are coming out if you know which ones have been dented. And if you're a person who really likes to take care of their games like I do, then obviously you know which cards are the ones that are damaged because it needles at your brain while you're playing with it. But rounded corners on these. The box is nice. Like I said, the box art. I definitely appreciate the concept of having the 3 different levels of decks. I think that's a very good way of doing a game like this, rather than saying, oh, here's some like not safe for work cards that you can mix into your deck, which is like a lot of party games would do. I appreciate that it's basically a different game all the way through if you're just playing with the specific deck. I definitely really appreciate that, and I appreciate the thought that went into that. In terms of my rating and my final thoughts on the game, I'd give it about a 7 or 8 when it comes to party games. I definitely think that it's up there with the big boys, and seeing that come from a much smaller company is really encouraging to me. I really like the fact that there is this kind of open field now when it comes to card games and board games, and you see a lot of really good games that are being launched by much smaller companies, that they're competing with the big boys that are out there. This is definitely definitely a really cool game. Social Lubricant Gaming seems like a great up-and-coming company, and I'll have a link to their website for this game in the description. I definitely feel like you should check it out. I highly recommend you try out this game. If you like what you've heard here today, or that you've seen and you like these reviews, definitely give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what your favorite party game is. I know I've asked that in the past, but I always like to see the new audience and what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified of all the reviews that I post in the future. And I'll catch you in the next game review, guys.